Hello, good day, students. Today, we'll be using this time to explain to us and to myself about reproduction in flowering plants. As we all know, that organisms need to reproduce so that they can have offspring and so that the organisms will not go into extinction. And as you know, plants are stationary, but they don't actually move the way humans do move to find mates to reproduce. So this is the reason why they have to devise special ways before they can get the eggs being fertilized by the sperm of the male. Now, the first thing we need to know is that you need to know that flowers contain reproductive organs protected by specialized leaves. So means we have the sepals, we have the petals. The sepals and the petals are modified leaves. They used to be what covers the flowers in the beginning when the flowers are just when they're just growing. So the sepals are the outermost layer that protects developing flowers. Like you see, the sepals when the flower is already fully developed, the sepals open. So this is a protective part for the developing flower, and also the petals, which can also it's also a part of a protective layer for the flowers, but it used to be most of the time inside. It needs to be very closer to the to the flower from the inside than the sepals. So the petals are very attractive. They used to have attractive colors, and the reason is because they need to drag the interest or attract the pollinators like bees or also insects to come very close to them so that the pollination can actually take place. And also, we need to know that we have a section. Some flowers have a combination of male and female parts, while some other ones have just ordinary, the female without the male. But for this, it has both the male and the female. And the male part of the flower is called the stamen. The stamen consists of the filament. This is the filament. Is a part. The filament is this. Is a part of the flower that carries the anther. It makes the anther erect at all time because the anther is a part of the flower that helps in making pollen grains. So once the pollen grains have been made, so they need a part of the flower to raise it up, to hold it up. So this is where the pollen grain are being made, which is called the anther, and the filament helps to raise it up so that it remains stationary so that pollinators can have access to the anther and pick pollen from it to put on the stigma of either the same flower or some other flowers. So anther helps to produce the pollen grains. And also, we need to know that the filament supports or it makes it to stand erect, the anther. And also the next one says, the innermost layer of the flower is the female carpel. The carpel, which is the innermost part, consists of the stigma. This is the stigma. The stigma used to be a very sticky part of the flower, and the style is a root, is a path from the stigma to the ovary. And the ovary is a part of the flower that has the ovule and all the female, female part in it, which I mean the ovule is a part of the flower which will have to get fused with the male part of the flower before fertilization takes place and before it leads to production of fruits. So the stigma, the style, and the ovary together is being called the carpel. And also the next one is the stigma is sticky. It has a sticky tip on the top, and the reason why it's sticky is for it to be able to hold on to the pollen grains when they fall or when they drop from the anther onto them. So if that is not possible, there is no way it would sink through the style to the ovary. The style is a tube leading the stigma to the ovary, as you can see. So this is called the style that links the stigma to the ovary, which is down here. And also, ovary produces female gametophyte. The female gametophyte is being made in the ovary, and we should understand that in the ovary we have the eggs in it, which is the part which we call the female gametophyte. And also, flowering plants pollinated when pollen grains land on the stigma. The wind pollinated flowers have small flowers and large amounts of pollen. So this differentiates between the wind pollinated flowers and animal pollinated flowers. The wind pollinated flowers need to have a lot of pollen grains, and also the petals are not very big, they're not very huge. But for the animals, they need to have a larger flower, I mean larger petals and sepals, and also they have less number of pollen grains. And the reason is because the animals need to use all the large flowers to drag or attract insects or pollinators to come around them so that they can get pollinated. While about the wind pollinated flowers don't have all those things, so they rather have a very buoyant body to allow them to move from one place to another place to make pollination easy for them. Many flowering plants pollinated by animal pollinators. Like this is an example of a pollinator, a bee, moving from one place up to another in the flower. And you can see some stuff being sticking to the body. And you let you see the pollen grains will have to stick to the mouth. So when it moves to the other flower to suck the nectar, then what happens is it drops the pollen mistakenly on the stigma of the flower. Pollination occurs as animals feed from flower to flower, and also animal pollination are more efficient than the wind. The reason is because the wind pollination doesn't have any agent that carries the pollen grain. But for the animals, the pollen grains are being carried by the pollinators. This is an example of a pollinator. And also, we should know that the fertilization in flowers takes place inside the flowers. We have the male gametophytes, or the pollen grains are being produced in the anther, which I said to you before. The male spores produced in the anther by meiosis. Meiosis is a method by which the main spores are being produced in anther, and each spores will have to divide. Each spore divides by mitosis. They divide by mitosis to form two haploid cells. And also, the two cells form a single pollen grain. Now, you know, each spore divides by mitosis to form two haploid cells. And from the two haploid cells, two cells will have to form one single pollen grain. So this is an example of a pollen grain. And also, one female gametophyte can form in each ovule. In each of the ovule, which is like the female sex cell, in each of the ovule of the flower's ovary, you can have one female gametophyte forming in it. Now, 4 female spores are being produced in the ovule by meiosis. One spore develops into female gametophyte, and the female gametophyte would have 7 cells in it. So one cell will have 2 nuclei or a polar nuclei. One of the cells will have to develop into an egg, and which will later be fertilized by the pollen grain, which is from the male gametophyte. Pollination occurs when the pollen grain lands on the stigma. So this is the stigma of this flower. This is the great pollinator. Now it's pollinating. When it lands on it, the pollinator, which is now a sperm, then moves down the pollen tube to get to the ovule and fertilize. So it says that one cell from pollen grain forms pollen tube. One of the cells from the pollen grain will form a pollen tube, which the pollen grain will have to go through down to the female section. All those cells, which we said we have 2 cells. So all those cells forms 2 sperm, which travels through the tube down to the female part of the flower. And also, flowering plants go through the process of double fertilization. The meaning of this is we have the female gametophyte. We also have the male. But the sperm from the male gametophyte, one of the sperms will have to fuse to the female female egg, and the other one will have to be in the close to the border, close to the edge of it. So this is the reason why we say double fertilization takes place in it. Now in a reproduction, so as I was saying, double fertilization takes place in flowers. So what I mean by double fertilization is that one of the sperms will fertilize the egg. So it does fertilize the egg this way. It fuses with the egg and fertilizes the egg, which will later develops into the embryo. And all the sperm unites with the polar nuclei. All the sperm unites with the polar nuclei. Here is the polar nuclei. And the reason it does that is to form an endosperm. So an endosperm has been formed when the sperm unites with the polar nuclei, and one of the sperm unites with the egg to form the embryo. So the outer layer of the ovule, which is this, the outer layer of the ovule, becomes a protective coat for the fruit when after the fertilization takes place. So the next one is to let you see some parts of the flowers. This is the petals, it's very colorful, and this is sepals, which is the outer covering, which opens up after the flower is already matured. Now we need to know some things about the simple and the compound pistils, just to let you know what really happens in the flower when the fertilization process is taking place. So this is the ovary. Now the ovary is been cut close so that you can see what is actually inside it. So this is the stigma and the style, which this is the way the pollen hangs on. It goes down through the style and gets to the ovary section. So the ovary section, you have the ovules, which is like the eggs inside it. You have the ovary wall. So now, in this case, you have the ovules. These are the ovules, and this is one couple. So, and also, we need to know that when all this has been brought really close to you to let you see how they look. So this is the way the flower looks like when you look very closely. Now this is the ovary wall, and this is one of the couples. These are the ovules in it, which is like the egg which the sperm fuses with to start to form an embryo. Now this stage is just a summary of all been said about the fertilization of flowering plants. So the first stage, which is number one, is the flower of a mature sporophyte. Because the dominant phase in the flowering plant is also the sporophyte phase. So at this junction, then this is actually what you have here. What you have here is this has been made larger. This is the ovary. We have the megasporocyte. We have the megasporangium. The megasporangium, which is also called the ovule, is here. So what happens is the next stage is meiotic division happens, and it forms a megaspore. And after that, the pollen grain, immature male gametophyte, the pollen grain now drops on it. Then now it comes spread down to meet the egg inside, and it starts the fertilization. I told you before, one of the cells, one of the spores, will have to form a tube, which is the pollen grain will have to go, which the sperm will have to go down through to form to meet the fertilized egg. So when the fertilization starts, then we have two sperms here. The two sperm cell will have to meet the egg. These are the egg nuclei, and this is the polar nuclei. So among these two sperms which comes down, you have one fusing with the egg cell, egg cell to form an embryo, and the other one fuses with the polar nuclei to form an endosperm. So this is called double fertilization, and the same thing happens here. So now you're going to have three N. That means you're going to have, the cell will now have a triploid 3N nucleus, so which become an endosperm. So this is after that, then you have the embryo, the seed coat, and the seed is in the fruit itself. So you're going to have an embryo. Then you have a seed coat which protects the internal part of the seed itself, and this is when the seed will start to grow again. So this is all you need to know about flowering plants. And flowering plants go through the process of double fertilization. One sperm fertilizes the egg, and the other sperm unites with the polar nuclei, forming the endosperm. The endosperm provides food supply for embryo before the leaves come out from it, before it starts to photosynthesize. So this is the endosperm, and this is the seed coat, and this is the embryo inside the seed. So, and each ovule becomes a seed. The surrounding ovary, the ovule, which is the protective layer outside the female gametophyte, turns into the fruit. But the ovule, which is the inside, becomes a seed. And this is the way it forms for every flowering plant. And I think this is all I have for you for fertilization in flowering plants. And I think this is actually really helpful. Thanks for listening.